Hello everyone. So welcome to session 20 of IS Baba's rapid revision series of 500 high probable topics for prelims 2020. I'm Pritham Reddy and I'll be dealing with 15 important topics in today's session which is very crucial for prelims examination this year. So in this session we will be dealing with important topics like exchange traded funds, Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund, Bharat 22, which sounds similar but it is confusing. So first we will deal with exchange traded funds. So an ETF or exchange traded fund is a marketable security that tracks an index, a commodity, bonds, or a basket of assets like an index fund. Or in simple words, you can remember this exchange traded funds are essentially a basket of securities that trade on an exchange just like a stock. So this ETFs, they track indexes like the Nifty, Sensex, or banking index. So next important point what you have to remember is what is the difference between this exchange traded funds and mutual funds. So first point is, unlike mutual funds, this exchange traded funds, they trade like a common stock on a stock exchange. Second point, this ETFs, they experience price changes throughout the day as they are bought and sold. So ETF share prices keep fluctuating throughout the day. So this is different from mutual funds that only trade once a day after the market closes. So this is the major point what you have to remember. And ETFs, they typically have higher daily liquidity and lower fees than mutual fund shares. So this makes exchange traded funds an attractive alternative for individual investors. Next important topic is Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund. So Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund, it is the first corporate bond ETF in the country. And this Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund will comprise a basket of bonds which is issued by central public sector enterprises, public sector undertakings, public sector financial institutions and other government organizations. So in simple I can say this Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund, it can create an additional source of funding for the central public sector undertakings, public sector enterprises, public sector financial institutions and government organizations. So this Bharat Bond ETFs, they are easily tradable on exchange and the unit size of the bond has been kept at just ₹1,000 so that even retail investors can invest. So small size unit of ₹1,000. And this each ETF will have a fixed maturity. So this Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund, they have a fixed maturity date and initially they will be issued in two series. One is 3 years and 10 years. So each series will have a separate index of the same maturity series and index will be constructed by an independent index provider, that is National Stock Exchange. So we'll see what are the benefits of this Bharat Bond ETF to investors, which is important. So this Bharat Bond ETF, it will provide safety, liquidity and predictable tax efficient returns because this ETF will comprise of basket of bonds issued by the government. So next important point is this Bharat Bond ETF, they provide access to retail investors to invest in bonds with smaller amount as low as ₹1,000. So this provides easy and low cost access to bond markets. And this Bharat Bond ETFs will increase participation of retail investors who are currently not participating in the bond markets due to liquidity and accessibility constraints. So the major objective of this bond market ETF is to deepen the bond market, to enhance retail participation and to reduce borrowing costs. So remember it. Next important topic is Bharat 22. So don't get confused with Bharat Bond Exchange Traded Fund and Bharat 22 ETF. So this Bharat 22 is launched by Government of India and it is managed by ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund. So targeting an initial amount of about ₹8,000 crore. So the strength of this ETF lies in the specially created index which is called S&P BSE Bharat 22 Index. So this index is a unique blend of shares of key government enterprises, public sector banks and also the government owned shares in blue chip private companies. So this Bharat 22 index constituents include leading Maharatnas and Navaratnas. And Bharat 22 is a well diversified ETF spanning around 6 sectors. So basic materials, energy, finance, FMCG, industrials and utilities. So the weightage in the Bharat 22 index given to basic materials is 4.4%, energy 17.5%, finance 20.3%, FMCG 15.2%, industrials 22.6% and utilities 20%. So the majority weightage is given to the industrials and then finance. And one important thing what you have to note here is Bharat 22 exchange traded fund, it is part of Government of India's overall disinvestment program announced earlier by the Department of Investment and Public Asset Management. So next important topic is alternative investment funds. So in India, alternative investment funds are defined in SEBI regulation, that is dealing with alternative investment fund. And this alternative investment funds refer to any privately pooled investment fund, whether from India or foreign sources, in the form of a trust or a company or a body corporate, which are not presently covered by any regulation of SEBI nor coming under any direct regulation of any other sectoral regulations such as IRDA, PFRDA or RBI. Hence, I can say in India, these alternative investment funds are those private funds which are not coming under the jurisdiction of any regulatory agency in India. So the amount contributed by the investors shall not be utilized for purpose of giving loans. So next we will see the different types of alternative investment funds. So category 1 alternative investment funds are those funds which have positive spillover effects on the economy. So certain incentives or concessions might be considered by the SEBI or Government of India. So when it comes to category 2 alternative investment funds, so these funds have no specific incentives or concessions or not given. And category 3 alternative investment funds, they are funds that are considered to have some potential negative externalities in certain situations and which undertake leverage to a greater extent. So they have negative externalities. So example of category 1 alternative investment fund can be venture capital fund, social venture funds, infrastructure funds, etc. Whereas example of second category might be real estate funds, private equity funds, funds for distressed assets, etc. Whereas for category 3, examples include hedge fund, pipe fund, etc. So next important topic is National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. So this National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, it is an Indian government backed entity established to provide long-term capital to country's infrastructure sector. So this NIIF was set up as an alternative investment fund in 2016 with a planned corpus of around 40,000 crore. So Indian government has 49% stake in this NIIF. Okay, so this NIIF is jointly owned by Government of India and it has 49% stake. And the rest is it is held by foreign and domestic investors such as Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, HDFC Group, etc. So with the center's significant stake, this NIIF is considered India's quasi-sovereign wealth fund. So this NIIF is also considered as India's quasi-sovereign wealth fund. The major objective of this NIIF would be to maximize economic impact mainly through infrastructure development in commercially viable projects, both greenfield and brownfield. So including the stalled projects. It could also consider other nationally important projects, for example, in manufacturing if they are commercially viable. So NIIF currently manages 3 funds, each with its distinctive investment mandate, So the funds are registered as alternative investment fund with the SEBI. So these three funds include master fund, fund of funds, and strategic fund. So know these basics, read about it and revise. So next important topic is angel tax, because recently center notified new rules pertaining to this angel tax. So first we'll see what is this angel tax. So angel tax is a 30% tax which is levied on the funding which is received by startups from an external investors. So I can say this angel tax is applicable to unlisted companies that have raised capital through sale of shares at a value above their fair market value. So this excess capital is treated as income and they are taxed accordingly. So this tax predominantly affects startups as well as the angel investments they attract, and it is counted as income to the company and it is taxed. So angel tax was introduced in 2012 with the main purpose of keeping money laundering in check. And you have to remember, there is no definitive or objective way to measure the fair market value of a startup, and this is the main problem as of now. So to encourage startups in the country, Center has notified some new rules pertaining to the angel tax, and they include easing of the much debated angel tax. So we will see what are the major changes. So investments of up to 25 crore in an eligible company will be exempt from the angel tax and any other scrutiny. And an eligible startup would be those that have been registered with the government and which has been incorporated for less than 10 years. So it has to be less than 10 years and it should not have turnover more than 100 crores over that period. So investment made by a listed company of a net worth of at least 100 crore or turnover of at least 250 crore would also be exempt. And next important point is investments made by non-residents will also be exempt. However, category 2 alternative investment funds was not included in the exclusion list, so you have to remember it. So next important topic is adjusted gross revenue or AGR, which is often in news. So this AGR is a fee sharing mechanism between government and telecos, who shifted to revenue sharing model or revenue sharing fee model in 1999 from the fixed license fee model. So in this course, telecos are supposed to share a percentage of AGR with the government. So this AGR is the usage and licensing fee that telecom operators are charged by the Department of Telecommunications. And this AGR comprises the regulatory fees that are broadly categorized into two areas. One is license fee and second one is spectrum usage charges. So licensee fee, which is like 5% universal service obligation fee plus 3% as license fee. And second comes the spectrum usage charges that range from 3 to 5%. So what is the major dispute you should know? The government says that AGR includes all revenues from both telecom as well as non-telecom services. But the operators suggest that it should include only the revenue from the core services. And recently, 2019 Supreme Court judgment, Supreme Court widened the definition of this AGR to include the government's view. So the court ordered to include all revenues except for termination fee and roaming charges as a part of the AGR. So you have to remember, as per Department of Telecom, the charges are calculated based on all revenues earned by a telecom, including non-telecom related sources. And telecos, they insist that AGR should comprise only the revenues generated from telecom services. So that is the major difference with the AGR. So next important topic is enhanced access and service excellence, that is EASE 3.0. So recently Finance Minister launched this EASE 3.0 for tech-enabled banking. So the major aim of this EASE 3.0 is to provide advanced solution that will make the public sector banks smart and technology enabled. So you have to remember, EASE 3.0 deals with smart and technology enabled public sector banks. So by this initiative, it intends to achieve ease of banking for customers. So EASE 3.0 reform agenda, it includes facilities like Palm Banking for end-to-end digital delivery of financial service and Banking on Go, that is EASE banking outlets at frequently visited spots like malls, stations, complex and campuses. So remember, this EASE, which is an enhanced access and service excellence, it is an index which ranks the state-owned banks on several parameters to assess their performance and provide inputs for improvements. So it deals with the public sector banks and Indian banking sector. So next important topic is shell companies. So recently there was a news that major racket of fake invoicing of thousands of crores was busted, which involved network of 23 shell companies. So we'll see what are these shell companies. So shell companies are typically corporate entities which do not have any active business operations or significant assets in their possession. That's the reason the government views them with suspicion, as some of them could be used for money laundering, tax evasion and other illegal activities. And one important point what you have to note is there is no clear definition of what shell company is in the Companies Act or any other act. So typically these shell companies include multiple layer of companies created for the purpose of diverting money or money laundering. So most shell companies, they do not manufacture any product or deal in any product or render any service. They are mostly used to make financial transaction. Generally these companies hold assets only on paper and not in reality. So these companies conduct almost no economic activity. However, you have to remember, not all shell companies may be money laundering vehicles. There are many shell companies that work within legal limits and they do not have financial irregularities. For example, a company may separate its HR function into another company altogether. The second one is legal entity which operates like any other company. So laws which are targeting the activities of shell companies are Binami Transaction Amendment Act 2016, Prevention of Money Laundering and the Companies Act 2013. So next important topic is regional rural banks. So recently government has approved around 670 crore recapitalization plan for these regional rural banks to improve their capital base. And in our previous session we have already covered regarding cooperative banks. So let's see what are these regional rural banks. So these RRBs were set up as a regional based rural lending institutions under the Regional Rural Banks Act 1976. And these RRBs, they are financial institutions which ensure adequate credit for agriculture and other rural sectors. So they were established based on the recommendation of Narsimhan Committee Working Group. So you have to remember, Narsimhan Committee Working Group recommended establishment of regional rural banks. And regional rural banks, they were established by three entities with their respective shares. That is 50% by central government, 15% by state government and 35% by sponsor bank. It is by sponsor bank. So this regional rural banks, they were configured as hybrid micro banking institutions by combining the local orientation and small scale lending culture of the cooperatives with the business culture of the commercial banks. So this RRBs, they work as a both cooperatives as well as commercial banks. And next important point what you have to notice, as per the RBI, regional rural banks have to provide 75% of their total credit under priority sector lending. And RRBs should maintain minimum capital to risk weighted assets of 9%. And RRBs are primarily catering to the credit and banking requirement of agriculture sector and rural areas. You have to remember. Okay. And RRBs also provide lending to micro, small enterprises and small enterprises in the rural areas. And the major objective of RRB is to bridge the credit gaps in the rural area and to develop such measures which could restrict the outflow of rural deposit to urban areas. So the recapitalization process of RRBs was approved by the cabinet in 2011 based on the recommendation of KC Chakrabarti Committee. So remember it. So next important topic is International Charter, Space and Major Disasters. So this international charter is a worldwide collaboration through which satellite data are made available for the benefit of disaster management. So by combining Earth observation assets from different space agencies, this international charter allows resources and expertise to be coordinated for rapid response to deal with major disaster situations. So it is able to mobilize agencies around the world and benefit from their know-how and their satellites through a single access point, that is international charter. And this charter is a non-binding charter which provides for the charitable and humanitarian related tasks, and it is initiated by European Space Agency and the French Space Agency after the Unispace 3 conference held in Vienna. Officially it came into operation on November 1, 2000 after Canadian Space Agency signed this particular charter. ISRO is a charter member, so you have to remember. So next important topic is Moon Agreement. So Moon Agreement, it is a multilateral treaty that turns jurisdiction of all celestial bodies, including the orbits around such bodies, over to the participant countries. So all activities would conform to international law, including the United Nations Charter. Okay, and India has signed this agreement which governs the activity of states on the moon and other celestial bodies, but never ratified it. So you have to remember this important point. So India has signed this Moon Agreement, but it has not ratified it. So this Moon Agreement seeks to promote rule of law in this humanitarian endeavor, and it says that human activities on the moon should be peaceful and in accordance with the international law. This means no military bases on the moon, no disruption of the existing balance of its environment, etc. So right now only 18 countries have signed the agreement, including India and France, but US, Russia and China has not signed it. So next important topic is Raman spectroscopy. So Raman spectroscopy is an analytical technique where scattered light is used to measure the vibrational energy modes of a sample. Okay, so you have to remember that Raman spectroscopy deals with scattered light, which is used to measure the vibrational energy modes of a sample. So in 1928, Raman discovered that when a stream of light passes through a liquid, a fraction of light scattered by liquid is of a different color. So you have to remember this particular sentence, very important to understand Raman spectroscopy. So C.V. Raman, while he was returning from London in a 15-day voyage, he started thinking about the color of the blue Mediterranean Sea. So he wasn't convinced by the explanation that the color of the sea was blue due to the reflection of the sky. So Raman was able to show that the blue color of the water was due to the scattering of the sunlight by water molecules. So next we'll know about Raman effect. So in this you have to remember, Raman effect is when the change in the energy of the light is affected by the vibration of the molecule or material under observation, leading to a change in its wavelength. Okay, see these two topics are little bit confusing, so try to know that Raman spectroscopy deals with the stream of light which is passing through a liquid, and a fraction of light which is scattered changes its color. And when it comes to Raman effect, it is dealing with the change in the energy of the light. So what are the applications? So recently researchers from Bangalore they had found an innovative way to detect mercury contamination in water using this Raman spectroscopy. And also Tata Memorial Center, they had turned to Raman spectroscopy to detect RNA virus present in the saliva samples. So next important topic is Satyabama portal. Okay, just you have to remember that Satyabama portal, it deals with the mining. So Satyabama full form is Science and Technology Yojana for Atmanirbhar in mining advancement. So this Satyabama portal for Science and Technology program is a scheme of Ministry of Mines which was launched in June 2020. So this portal has been designed, developed and implemented by National Informatics Center under Mines Informatic Division. And this Satyabama portal is integrated with NGO Darpan portal of Niti Aayog And remember, NGO Darpan portal, it provides interface between voluntary organizations or NGOs with government ministries and departments. So you have to remember these two portals, especially Satyabama portal is important. So next important topic is RNA and microRNA. So microRNA was in news because a team of researchers, especially from IIT Madras Cancer Institute and IISc Bangalore, they have identified a specific microRNA that is overexpressed in tongue cancer. So we'll try to remember RNA and miRNA, that is microRNA. So RNA is a nucleic acid which is directly involved in protein synthesis. So you have to remember that it is directly involved in protein synthesis. And this ribonucleic acid is an important nucleotide with long chain of nucleic acid present in all living cells. And its main role is to act as a messenger conveying instructions from DNA for controlling the protein synthesis. So this point is important, this point is important. And you should know the difference between RNA and DNA. So RNA is a single stranded molecule which has a shorter chain of nucleotides, whereas DNA is a double stranded molecule that has a long chain of nucleotides. So you have to know the difference. So RNA contains uracil as a nitrogenous base in place of the thymine used in DNA. So microRNA, they are nothing but small ribonucleic acid, and they are non-coding RNAs involved in the regulation of a variety of biological and pathological processes, including the formation and development of cancer. So the main function of this microRNA is to silence the expression of the other genes. So if microRNA silences oncogenes, that is the gene that has the potential to cause cancer, so cancer will be suppressed. So if they suppress tumor suppressor gene, the cancer will progress. So microRNAs are associated with cancer are called OncoMIRs. So next important point is you should know the difference between microRNA inhibition therapy and micro replacement therapy. So usually in micro inhibition therapy, the microRNA has been shown to work as oncogenes, and whereas in micro replacement therapy, this microRNA acts as tumor suppress genes. So this is the difference. So these are the 15 important topics for this session. So let's meet with more important topics in upcoming session. Thank you.